Hey guys. Tonight's we begin with a throne that looks impressive until you actually have to sit on it every day. You live inside a castle where everything echoes, nothing is warm, and everyone is watching to see if you slip, cough, or die at an inconvenient time. Being royal means never being bored and never being alone. You are fed constantly, bathed rarely, and judged relentlessly. Power surrounds you, but comfort never quite arrives. Tonight, you are stepping into the strange daily routine of medieval royalty, where luxury is loud, privacy is dangerous, and survival wears a crown. So before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And be sure to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now, get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You wake before the sun because the castle decides you should. Stone does not care about comfort or schedules. It only remembers cold, and it shares that memory generously. The walls sweat last night's chill into the air, and your breath shows up before your thoughts do. Somewhere nearby, a servant is already moving, careful but not quiet, because silence in a castle is suspicious. You are awake now, whether you wanted to be or not. Your bed is wide enough to impress visitors and hard enough to remind you that rest is a courtesy, not a right. Layers of wool and fur sit on top of you like a polite animal pile, all of them once alive, all of them failing at their current job. You shift, and the mattress answers with a creak that echoes off the stone, announcing to anyone listening that power has turned over. You do not wake alone. You never do. There is no such thing as easing into the morning. Royalty does not stretch or linger. You surface from sleep directly into responsibility, like being dropped into cold water with a crown balanced on your head. Before you speak, someone clears their throat. Before you stand, someone has already decided what you will wear. Authority does not wait for you to feel human first. The floor greets your feet with the enthusiasm of a winter river. Rugs exist, but they are decorative lies placed exactly where you do not step. You learn early that castles are designed to look strong, not feel kind. Every surface exists to last longer than you do, and it knows it. The stones have seen kings come and go, and they greet each new one with the same indifference. You are dressed layer by layer, each garment heavy, symbolic, and slightly damp from the air. Linen first, then wool, then whatever statement piece reminds everyone who you are supposed to be today. It is armor disguised as clothing, meant to project control while quietly stealing your body heat. Someone tightens something too much. You let it happen. Correcting servants before breakfast sets a bad tone, and tone matters more than comfort. The room smells like smoke, old fabric, and human closeness that never quite leaves. Fireplaces help, but they do not conquer the cold so much as negotiate with it. The flames crackle like they are gossiping about you, and the heat stays close to the hearth, unwilling to travel. You stand there, absorbing what little warmth you can, holding your hands out like a pilgrim, pretending this is dignified. Outside the narrow window, the world is gray and waiting. Inside, the day has already begun without your permission. A page appears with a message. A steward follows with a list. A guard shifts his weight and watches your reflection instead of your face. Everyone needs something, and none of it can wait until you have fully woken up. Power is impatient that way. Breakfast is announced as if it is a gift rather than a performance. You are led through corridors that echo every step, reminding you how large your life is and how small you feel inside it. Tapestries line the walls, telling heroic stories of ancestors who never had to deal with drafts like this. Their victories look warm and decisive. You wonder if they ever woke up wishing the sun would hurry. The table groans under the weight of food meant to demonstrate abundance, not appetite. Bread, meat, porridge, and something swimming in fat that claims to be a delicacy. You eat because watching matters. You chew because stopping would invite questions. The food is filling and joyless, fuel for a body that is not allowed to falter. Somewhere in the room, someone is already watching how much you leave behind. As you sit there, wrapped in layers, surrounded by people, you realize warmth is not the goal. Control is. The cold keeps you alert. The discomfort keeps you visible. If you were cozy, you might forget yourself. The castle will not allow that. Every chill, every echo, every early morning exists to remind you that authority is something you perform constantly, even when you are half awake and longing for a softer world. By the time the sun finally breaks through the clouds, you have already ruled, decided, and endured. The day is young, and you are already tired. The stones remain unmoved, the servants efficient, the crown heavy in ways no one ever writes songs about. This is how you wake inside stone walls, where warmth is optional and authority is never allowed to sleep in. You learn very quickly that being alone is suspicious. In a castle, solitude is treated the way villagers treat eclipses, as an omen that something has gone wrong or is about to. If a door closes for too long, someone knocks. If it stays closed after that, someone unlocks it. Privacy is not assumed. It is negotiated, documented, and usually denied. Your chambers are large, impressive, and functionally public. There are tapestries on the walls depicting heroic ancestors who also never got a moment to themselves. There is furniture meant to suggest leisure, chairs you never sit in without witnesses, a desk that exists entirely so people can watch you use it. Even the windows are narrow, not for romance, but because someone decided centuries ago that glass was optional and arrows were forever. You are never truly alone, even when the room looks empty. Servants move quietly, but not invisibly. Guards linger just out of sight, close enough to hear you breathe, far enough away to pretend it is not strange. Somewhere behind a wall, someone is always listening for something important, or scandalous, or useful later. You learn to speak carefully even when you think you are talking to yourself, because walls have memories and people have better ones. Bathing is a communal affair, which is an impressive phrase for a deeply awkward experience. The tub is large, the water lukewarm, and the audience extensive. Someone pours, someone scrubs, someone comments on the temperature as if you are not the one sitting in it. You are clean in theory and observed in practice. If you ask for fewer people, someone assumes you are hiding illness, weakness, or treason. Nakedness is allowed. Privacy is not. Even your thoughts feel crowded. You cannot read without someone holding the book. You cannot pray without someone nearby to confirm you are doing it correctly. You cannot nap without it becoming a topic of discussion by dinner. Time belongs to the castle, not to you. Your body is a schedule everyone else follows, and your silence is interpreted as a decision that needs clarifying. At night, the illusion of privacy improves slightly, but never enough to relax. Curtains are drawn, but they are thin and ceremonial. Candles flicker, casting shadows that feel like company. Somewhere in the room, someone shifts their weight. Somewhere in the corridor, someone coughs, not because they need to, but because it is reassuring to be heard. You lie there listening to a building breathe, wondering if anyone has ever slept deeply inside it. Conversations happen around you as if you are furniture. Servants discuss logistics. Guards trade rumors. Courtiers whisper things they hope you will overhear and things they hope you will not. You are the most watched person in the room and the least free to react. Laughing too loudly invites commentary. Staying quiet invites speculation. Every response becomes a performance, and every performance becomes evidence. There are moments when you try to escape. A walk along the battlements, a pause in a side chapel, a few stolen minutes staring out at fields you technically own but rarely touch. Even then, footsteps follow. Someone always needs to be near you, for protection, for protocol, or because being close to power feels safer than being useful. The air outside is cold and honest, but the castle never quite lets go. You begin to understand why kings talk to animals and queens confide in tapestries. Objects do not report back. Stone does not repeat secrets. A dog might listen without judgment, though even it has probably been trained to watch you carefully. The idea of thinking without witnesses becomes intoxicating, like a forbidden luxury you are not sure actually exists. The strangest part is how normal it becomes. You stop expecting silence. You stop expecting space. Your inner voice adjusts to the constant audience, lowering itself, editing itself, learning which thoughts are safe to linger on. You develop the skill of feeling lonely in crowded rooms, a talent perfected only by those who are never allowed to disappear. Power, you realize, does not isolate you by putting you alone. It isolates you by making sure you are never allowed to be. You learn very quickly that looking powerful and feeling comfortable are not allies. They barely tolerate each other. Dressing like royalty is a daily ritual performed in layers, symbols, and quiet suffering, and it begins long before you are fully awake. Someone enters with clothing arranged carefully over their arms, as if fabric itself might be offended by being handled casually. Each piece represents status, lineage, and authority. None of them represent relief. The first layer goes on soft enough, linen meant to protect you from the rougher things to come. It is clean in the medieval sense, which means it was aired out and no longer actively damp. Then comes the wool, thick and heavy, designed for warmth but achieving mostly irritation. It clings where it should not, traps heat where you do not want it, and rubs your skin with the enthusiasm of a loyal but poorly trained dog. You feel it immediately, that faint itch that promises to grow into something far more distracting by mid-morning. Someone adjusts the sleeves, someone tightens the collar, someone smooths a crease that did not bother you until it became ceremonial. You stand there like a statue being assembled by committee. Scratching is frowned upon, not because it is undignified, but because it suggests discomfort, and discomfort suggests weakness. Weakness invites opinions. Opinions invite trouble. By the time the outer garments are added, you are wrapped in color, embroidery, and quiet misery. Velvet looks impressive and behaves terribly. Silk feels luxurious for exactly the first minute, then begins plotting against you. Fur trims whisper against your neck, reminding you that this once belonged to something that did not consent to becoming formal wear. Every movement becomes deliberate, not for grace, but to avoid setting off another wave of irritation. The itching is never dramatic. That would be manageable. It is subtle, persistent, and strategic. It starts at the wrist, then migrates, then splits its attention between your collarbone and somewhere just out of reach beneath your belt. You learn to address it indirectly, a shift of weight, a careful roll of the shoulder, a dignified clearing of the throat that accomplishes nothing but makes you feel productive. The worst part is knowing you are not alone in this experience. Lice are democratic creatures. They respect no bloodline. Somewhere beneath your crown, beneath the careful braiding and scented oils, tiny freeloaders have set up a thriving community. You are their monarch now. They enjoy the warmth, the layers, the complete lack of regular bathing. They thrive while you pretend not to notice. Servants notice, of course. They always do. They exchange glances when you fidget too much. They offer adjustments that are really inspections. Someone suggests a change of fabric, as if the problem is fashion and not biology. You thank them graciously and do not scratch. As the day progresses, the garments grow heavier. The castle warms slightly, which somehow makes everything worse. Sweat collects where air refuses to circulate. The itch sharpens. You listen to petitions while resisting the urge to dig your fingers into your own sleeves like a desperate child. Someone is talking about land disputes. Someone else is talking about taxes. All you can think about is your left ankle. Meals provide no relief. Sitting makes the fabric bunch in new and exciting ways. Standing pulls at seams that feel personal now. You smile, nod, and scratch your knuckle against the table leg like it was intentional. It is not. At some point, you realize peasants probably have it easier. Their clothes are simpler. Rough, yes, but honest. They can scratch without an audience. They can adjust without consequences. Their discomfort is not symbolic. Yours is part of the job. By evening, the ritual reverses. Layers are removed, one by one, each departure bringing a brief, glorious moment of relief. You resist the urge to scratch wildly until the room clears. When it finally does, when you are alone enough to be human, you give in. It is undignified. It is necessary. Tomorrow, you will do it all again. The crown will sit perfectly. The robes will shimmer. The itching will return. Power, you learn, does not stop you from scratching. It just teaches you how to do it without anyone noticing. You learn quickly that hunger is not the point of eating. Food in a castle is language, leverage, and sometimes a threat delivered on a silver platter. The table stretches longer than most village streets, groaning under the weight of dishes designed to impress witnesses rather than satisfy bodies. You sit at the center because that is where power is supposed to sit, and everyone watches how you hold your knife. Refusing food is not read as restraint, it is read as judgment. If you decline a dish, the cook takes it personally, the noble who sponsored it takes it politically, and someone else quietly wonders if you are ill, poisoned, or plotting something unwholesome. Appetite is loyalty. A clean plate is approval. You learn this the first time you hesitate, and the room shifts its attention to you like a flock of birds sensing movement. The food arrives in waves. Meat roasted until it forgets what animal it was. Bread stacked like architecture. Stews thick enough to stand a spoon upright, which they often do. Everything swims in fat, butter, or sauce meant to demonstrate wealth through excess. Subtlety is for poor people and philosophers. You are expected to eat like the land itself is trying to impress you. You are not hungry enough for this. No one ever is. But you lift your fork anyway, because eating is part of ruling. Each bite is a performance. You chew slowly, thoughtfully, as if tasting notes include political stability and favorable alliances. Someone across the table nods when you reach for more. Someone else relaxes when you accept a second helping. This is diplomacy with gravy. There are rules you are never formally taught. Eat what is offered first by the highest-ranking guest. Compliment the dish that came from the most fragile alliance. Finish the plate prepared by the household you most need to keep calm this season. Do not eat too eagerly, because that suggests desperation. Do not eat too little, because that suggests disdain. Somewhere between satisfaction and endurance lies acceptable leadership. The worst meals are the ceremonial ones. Feasts that last for hours, each course arriving just as your body quietly begs for mercy. Your stomach fills, stretches, and then is politely ignored. You smile through it. You toast through it. You listen to speeches while calculating how much more space you might have left if you breathe carefully. Someone begins clapping between courses. This feels unnecessary. Wine flows freely, because water is suspicious and sobriety invites honesty. You drink because refusing would be interpreted as mistrust. You drink because it dulls the sensation of being overfed in public. You drink because everyone else is watching how often you raise the cup. At some point, the room grows louder, warmer, and more confident than it deserves to be. Servants hover, eager and relentless. Your plate is never empty long enough to rest. If you pause, someone fills it. If you slow, someone encourages. If you protest, even gently, someone laughs as if you are joking. The abundance must be consumed, or it loses meaning. Leftovers are a kind of insult. You think about the people outside the castle walls who rarely see this much food at once. You think about how this meal could feed families for days. Then you think about how none of that matters here. Excess is the point. Power proves itself by wasting nothing and eating everything. By the time dessert arrives, your body has stopped cooperating. Honey cakes, candied fruit, creams whipped into submission. You accept them because declining sweetness suggests bitterness, and bitterness is dangerous in a ruler. You chew carefully, aware of how full you are, aware of how closely your expression is being studied. When the meal finally ends, you rise slowly, because moving too fast after eating like this is undignified and unwise. Applause follows, not for you, but for the ritual completing itself successfully. No one collapsed. No alliances shattered. The food did its job. Later, alone enough to admit it, you feel uncomfortable, heavy, and tired. Tomorrow you will do it again. You will eat because it is expected. You will eat because it is watched. You will eat because in a castle, refusing food is not a personal choice. It is a statement, and statements have consequences. You discover bathing is not a routine so much as an event, and not a frequent one. Water exists in the castle. Technically, it drips from walls, pools and corners, and seeps into stone with a patience you learn to respect. But water meant for cleaning a human body is treated like a strategic resource. It must be hauled, heated, blessed, supervised, and justified. No one is doing that casually. The logic is explained to you with confidence. Too much bathing weakens the body. Hot water opens the pores, and open pores invite disease, spirits, or both, depending on who is talking. Besides, scented cloths exist, oils exist, perfumes exist. Why tempt fate when you can simply smell like rosemary and authority instead? So you are wiped down instead of washed. A servant approaches with a cloth, warm but not ambitious, and dabs at the places that are socially acceptable to acknowledge. Face, hands, neck, perhaps wrists if the day feels generous. Everything else is left to layers of fabric and collective denial. The cloth is reused more than it should be. You do not ask questions. At first, you barely notice. Everyone smells roughly the same. Smoke, sweat, wool, old wood, and something vaguely herbal that tries its best. The castle has an aroma, and you are now part of it. Over time, however, the smell becomes personal. It clings, it settles, it develops opinions. The problem is not dirt alone. It is narrative. In a place where bathing is rare, cleanliness becomes suspicious. If someone notices you smell better than usual, they wonder why. Did you bathe secretly? Are you hiding illness? Are you trying to impress someone? Are you planning something that requires a fresh body and plausible deniability? You learn that water removes more than grime. It removes mystery, and mystery is currency. Better to be consistently unwashed than unexpectedly clean. Rumors move faster than any bath ever could. A whisper in a corridor travels through the castle before the next bell rings. Someone notices a change in scent. Someone comments. Someone else adds meaning. By dinner, you are rumored to be ill, inspired, or dangerously confident. None of this is helped by the fact that everyone is standing far too close to you at all times. Servants become experts in interpretation. They sniff the air like scholars reading sacred texts. A hint of lavender means indulgence. A hint of nothing means concealment. Too much perfume suggests panic. Too little suggests neglect. You cannot win. You can only be consistent. When a bath does happen, it is ceremonial and inconvenient. The tub is dragged in. Water is heated slowly, loudly, and with commentary. The room fills with steam and observers. You are lowered in like a sacred object, not a person. Someone pours. Someone watches. Someone takes mental notes. The water cools too quickly. You exit damp and more aware than before. Afterward, the castle notices. People comment on your freshness as if it were a personality trait. Someone smiles too knowingly. Someone else looks offended. A rumor begins immediately, because it must. Cleanliness cannot simply exist. It has to mean something. Within days, the smell of daily life returns. The layers trap it. The halls reinforce it. You stop noticing again, which is the most dangerous part. Habituation is quiet. It convinces you this is normal, acceptable, inevitable. Then one day, you catch your reflection and realize the concept of clean has shifted without your consent. Outside the castle walls, villagers bathe in rivers when they can. They smell like water and earth and honest labor. Inside, you smell like power, which is harder to wash off and far more persistent. The irony is not lost on you. You have access to wealth beyond imagination and fewer baths than a shepherd. The castle prefers it this way. Smell is a reminder that you belong to the structure, not to yourself. It blurs individuality. It keeps everyone equal in discomfort. A fresh ruler might feel separate. A scented ruler might feel modern. Neither is acceptable, so you learn to live with it. You learn to ignore the itch, the film, the subtle shift in air when you enter a room. You learn that water is scarce, but opinions are endless. And while a bath requires effort, time, and permission, a roomer needs only a breath. In the end, you accept the truth the castle has always known. You can avoid water for weeks, but you cannot avoid being talked about for even a moment. You learn that servants are the castle's memory. Walls may stand for centuries, but servants remember details walls never bother to notice. They see everything because they are supposed to, and they forget nothing because forgetting would be dangerous. You can ignore a servant's presence, but a servant never ignores you. They are there when you wake, already moving, already aware of how you slept, how often you shifted, whether you coughed in the night. Someone noticed if you kicked off the covers. Someone noticed if you spoke in your sleep. Someone noticed if you lay still too long and made a quiet decision about whether to alert someone important. You are never the first to know how your body behaved. Servants move like part of the architecture. They blend into corners, doorways, and routines so well that you stop seeing them until you desperately wish you had. They hold trays, doors, towels, secrets. They hear conversations meant for no one else. They hear arguments whispered into pillows and alliances discussed over half-finished cups of wine. You assume silence protects you. It does not. They see you before the crown and after it. They know how long it takes you to wake fully. They know which foods you push aside first. They know which garments make you fidget and which ones make you stand taller. They know when you are pretending confidence and when you are borrowing it temporarily. You might fool nobles. You never fool servants. What makes it worse is that they are polite about it. No judgment, no visible reaction, just a nod, a quiet adjustment, a note taken somewhere behind the eyes. Their faces remain neutral while their minds collect details like currency. They do not gossip loudly. They archive. You begin to realize that servants outlast rulers. A king comes and goes. A queen rises and falls. Servants remain, adapting to new authority with the ease of people who understand survival. They remember the last ruler who made the same mistake you just made. They remember how that ended. They do not warn you unless it benefits them. At meals, they watch how you eat and how you interact. They notice who you favor, who you interrupt, who you avoid looking at. At court, they track which petitions make you impatient and which ones make you pause. They learn your moods before you do. Eventually, they can predict them. This is not magic. It is proximity. You cannot ask them what they know. That would be admitting vulnerability. You cannot demand their silence. That would be naive. Instead, you learn to perform consistently. Consistency makes you boring, and boring is safer than surprising. Servants relax around predictable rulers. They tense around volatile ones. There are moments when you forget yourself. A sigh too loud. A comment too honest. A frustration expressed without polish. Those moments are small and human, and they do not disappear. They follow you quietly, resurfacing months later in the way a servant hesitates or anticipates your reaction. You never hear the echo. You just feel it. The most unsettling part is how much they care without caring. They ensure you are dressed, fed, protected. They will step between you and danger without hesitation. And yet, they remain emotionally untouched by your authority. They have seen too many versions of you. They know the crown changes heads more often than habits. Some servants are loyal. Some are ambitious. Some are simply tired. All of them are observant. They know which rumors are true and which ones are convenient. They know where bodies are buried because they helped clean the room afterward. They know which alliances are real because they saw who stayed after everyone else left. You start to understand that the castle does not belong to you. It belongs to the people who keep it functioning while rulers perform importance inside it. Servants pass knowledge down quietly, like heirlooms. They tell new servants what to watch for, what to avoid, what not to mention near you if they value their position. When you finally realize how much they know, it is too late to do anything about it. You cannot unsee their presence now. Every movement feels recorded. Every mood feels cataloged. You wonder how many rulers before you had the same thought, standing in the same room, watched by the same quiet eyes. Power may sit on the throne, but memory stands behind it, holding a tray, listening patiently, and waiting. Night arrives without relief. The castle dims, but it never truly sleeps, and neither do you. When you are led to bed, it feels less like rest and more like a change of audience. The room fills with shadows, but the people remain. Guards take their places. Servants finish their last adjustments. Someone lingers to ensure the candles are positioned just right. Not for ambiance, but so your face remains visible even while you lie down. Your bed is enormous, dramatic, and strategically placed so that no one could accuse you of hiding. Curtains exist, but they are decorative promises, thin enough to suggest privacy while offering none. If you close them fully, someone coughs politely. If you leave them open, someone watches politely. Either way, the message is clear. Sleep is allowed. Disappearing is not. You lie back and listen to the sounds of loyalty shifting. Boots adjust. Armor creaks. A guard clears his throat in a way that suggests boredom rather than vigilance. Another shifts his weight, perhaps thinking about tomorrow, perhaps thinking about who might be in charge tomorrow. Loyalty is not a fixed thing here. It breathes, it reacts, it recalculates. Guards are loyal to the crown, not necessarily the person wearing it. You understand this intellectually, but it feels different when you are horizontal and unarmed. The sword is nearby, ceremonial and useless where it rests. The real weapons are awake, alert, and owned by people whose futures depend on how this night ends. You close your eyes anyway, because refusing sleep would look suspicious, and suspicion invites attention. Sleep comes in pieces, shallow and cautious. You drift off only to wake again at the sound of footsteps, which turn out to be nothing or everything. You never quite know. Dreams are interrupted by whispers you cannot place. Sometimes they are real. Sometimes they are just the castle reminding you it exists. A laugh travels down the corridor and stops abruptly. A door opens somewhere far away. Someone coughs again, closer this time. You count breaths that are not yours. In theory, you are protected. In practice, protection is a negotiation renewed constantly. Guards are paid, promoted, punished, and praised. Their loyalty adjusts accordingly. A favor promised tomorrow can outweigh an oath sworn yesterday. You know this because you have done the math yourself during daylight hours. At night, the numbers feel heavier. You wonder how many rulers have stared at this same ceiling, listening to the same sounds, convincing themselves that everyone in the room wants them alive. Some did, some did not. The castle does not correct these assumptions. It only observes the outcome. There are nights when a guard you trust is replaced without explanation. You ask casually the next day. You are given an answer that sounds reasonable and feels incomplete. Reasonable and incomplete are the building blocks of palace life. You file it away and sleep a little lighter afterward. The strangest part is how normal it becomes. You learn which footsteps are familiar. You learn which breathing patterns belong to which guard. You can tell when someone new has taken a position by the way the room feels slightly wrong, like furniture moved an inch without permission. You adjust your breathing to match the rhythm of the space, hoping to disappear into it just enough to rest. Sometimes you wake suddenly, heart racing, convinced something is wrong. Nothing ever is, or nothing ever admits to it. A guard meets your eyes and nods reassuringly. You nod back, because reassurance is a shared performance. Both of you need to believe it. On rare nights, exhaustion wins. You sleep deeply for an hour, maybe two. When you wake, the room looks the same, but the people are not. A shift change has happened quietly. New faces stand where old ones were. Loyalty has rotated without disturbing your dreams, and that somehow feels worse than if you had been awake to witness it. You learn not to grow too attached to any one presence. Familiarity invites disappointment. Trust is rationed carefully, handed out in small amounts, and withdrawn at the first sign of change. You sleep surrounded by people, yet alone in the most specific way possible. In the morning, you rise, alive and accounted for. The night has passed successfully. No one congratulates you. Survival is assumed, not celebrated. The guards who stood watch look the same, sound the same, and may already be thinking about the next hour, the next shift, the next opportunity. You thank them anyway, because tonight you will close your eyes again in the same room, under the same ceiling, surrounded by people whose loyalty is never fixed, only currently aligned. You discover very quickly that the chair is not for sitting. It is for being seen. Calling it a chair is generous. It is a statement carved out of wood, stone, or gilded intimidation, designed to remind everyone in the room that authority has a shape and you are currently occupying it. Comfort was never consulted during its creation. The seat is high enough to separate you from everyone else, which looks impressive and feels impractical. Your feet do not rest naturally on the floor. They hover or strain, depending on your height and the ambitions of the carpenter. The back is straight, rigid, and unforgiving, as if posture alone might enforce obedience. Armrests dig in at exactly the wrong angle, forcing you to choose between numbness and dignity. You sit there because standing would undermine the performance. Ruling is theater, and the throne is your stage mark. Move too much and you look uncertain. Shift too often and someone starts whispering. You learn to still your body, even when it protests. Authority is expressed through restraint, not ease. The chair places you above the room but not beyond it. Everyone can see you, and you can see everyone, which is the point. It is easier to judge people when they have to look up at you. It is harder to feel human when they do. Faces blur into categories: petitioners, courtiers, people waiting to see what kind of ruler you will be today. The chair does not help you decide. It only demands that you already know. Time stretches when you are seated like this. Minutes become heavy. Hours press into your spine. You listen to disputes that began before you were born and will continue after you are gone. You nod thoughtfully, because nodding suggests wisdom. You lean forward occasionally, because leaning suggests interest. You never slouch, because slouching suggests weakness, and weakness is noticed immediately. The throne amplifies everything. A sigh becomes a statement. A crossed leg becomes a rumor. If you grimace, someone assumes a war has started. If you smile, someone assumes they are winning. Your body language is read like scripture by people desperate for meaning. You become aware of muscles you did not know you had, all of them straining to maintain an illusion of effortless control. The irony is that the chair itself is a trap. Once you sit, leaving it feels like a concession. You cannot rise without reason, and reasons must be significant. Hunger does not count. Discomfort certainly does not. You remain there long past the point of numbness, because the moment you stand, the room changes. Conversations pause. Eyes follow. Someone will remember it. There are days when the chair is modified. Cushions are added, removed, or rearranged by well-meaning attendants who swear it makes a difference. It never does. The problem is not padding, it is purpose. The throne is meant to outlast you, not support you. It is designed to remind you that the power you hold is temporary, even as it pretends to be eternal. You think about the rulers who sat here before you. Some were tall, some were short, some were confident, some were terrified. The chair did not adjust for any of them. It did not care. It accepted their weight, their presence, their ambition, and then waited patiently for the next body to occupy it. At some point, your legs go numb. This is not mentioned. You continue listening, deciding, existing. The room smells faintly of wax, fabric, and expectation. Somewhere in the crowd, someone is counting how long you have been seated. Someone else is wondering if you look tired. You are. You do not show it. When court finally ends, you rise slowly, carefully, as if nothing hurts. The chair remains behind, silent and unchanged. It does not acknowledge your departure. It never does. It will wait here, solid and indifferent, for the next person who believes ruling means sitting comfortably. As you walk away, you understand the truth hidden in plain sight. The throne is not uncomfortable by accident. It is uncomfortable on purpose, because power is not meant to let you forget how heavy it is. You learn that court is not a meeting. It is an endurance test disguised as ceremony. By the time you take your place, you are already tired in ways sleep does not fix. Your body wants rest. Your mind wants quiet. Neither is invited. The hall fills anyway, because people have been waiting all morning to be heard, seen, acknowledged, or simply noticed standing near you. You sit upright, shoulders squared, face composed into something neutral enough to pass for wisdom. Exhaustion settles into you like a second spine, invisible but structural. You do not lean on it. You wear it. Tiredness, when properly managed, reads as seriousness. If you look alert, you seem frivolous. If you look weary, you look important. Petitions begin. One by one, people step forward with problems that feel enormous to them and abstract to you. Land disputes measured in generations, family feuds dressed up as legal concerns, requests for money, favors, protection, forgiveness. Each speaker watches your face closely, searching for any flicker of approval or irritation. You learn to control your expression because blinking too slowly suggests boredom, and boredom suggests danger. Your legs ache from sitting. Your back reminds you of the chair's opinion on posture. Your eyes sting from smoke and candlelight. None of this is allowed to matter. You nod thoughtfully, ask questions you already know the answers to, and issue decisions that will echo through lives you will never meet. Somewhere in the crowd, someone is counting how many times you shift in your seat. Time stretches in strange ways here. A single complaint can last longer than a war. Entire afternoons vanish into discussions that resolve nothing but must be performed anyway. You learn to pace your attention, because giving too much too early leaves you empty by midday. Holding court is not about fairness alone. It is about stamina. The trick is making exhaustion look intentional. You let your eyes rest half-lidded, not because you are fading, but because you are contemplative. You pause before answering, not because your thoughts are slow, but because they are deep. When your voice drops, it is not from fatigue. It is authority settling into its proper register. Courtiers whisper behind their hands. They debate your mood, your health, your resolve. Some decide you are strong because you endure this without complaint. Others decide you are weak because you do not end it sooner. Both groups will use their conclusions later. You cannot control which one wins, only how much evidence you give them. Servants move quietly at the edges, refreshing candles, adjusting hangings, watching you watch others. They notice when your focus drifts. They notice when your jaw tightens. They notice everything, but they do not intervene. This is your performance. They are only here to ensure it continues uninterrupted. At some point, hunger makes an appearance, polite but persistent. You ignore it. Eating during court would look indulgent. Hunger is acceptable. Comfort is suspicious. Someone presents a particularly tedious grievance, and you find yourself focusing on the rhythm of their voice rather than the content. You correct this immediately. Losing focus in public is dangerous. The room grows warm as bodies shift and patience thins. Candles drip wax like time itself is melting. Your neck stiffens. Your hands rest still on the armrests, even though one has gone slightly numb. You do not shake it out. That would look human. When court finally adjourns, there is no applause, only relief disguised as respect. People bow, retreat, whisper. You rise carefully, making sure the movement looks deliberate, not desperate. Your legs protest. You ignore them. The walk out of the hall feels longer than the walk in, as if the castle itself is testing whether you deserve to leave. Later, alone enough to admit it, you feel hollowed out. Your thoughts are slower. Your body feels borrowed. But in the eyes of the court, the day was a success. You endured. You listened. You ruled. Exhaustion did not defeat you. You made it look like dignity. You learned that silence is not peace. In a castle, silence is an alarm that has decided not to ring out loud. Noise is normal. Footsteps echoing through corridors, murmured conversations behind tapestries, the constant low hum of a place stuffed with people pretending to mind their roles. Sound means the system is working. Silence means something has slipped out of alignment. The first time you notice it, You dismiss it as coincidence, a pause between movements, a stretch of corridor without the usual shuffling. You keep walking, telling yourself it is late or early or simply quiet by chance. But the air feels different, too still, like the castle is holding its breath. You stop without meaning to. The stone beneath your feet feels colder than usual, as if it has been waiting. Somewhere far away, a door closes softly, too softly. No laughter follows. No voices rise to fill the gap. That is when your attention sharpens, because castles do not do empty well. They are designed to amplify life, not remove it. Silence suggests absence, and absence suggests intent. You think about all the sounds you normally ignore, the clink of armor settling, the murmur of servants exchanging information disguised as pleasantries, the cough of a guard who wants to be noticed doing his job. When those disappear, you start counting what is missing instead of what is present. Who should be here? Who was here earlier? Who has not been seen in a while? Your instincts tell you to move, but not quickly. Sudden movement invites attention, and attention invites explanations. You walk at the same measured pace, listening harder than seems reasonable. Your own breathing sounds loud. You slow it down. Even the echo of your footsteps feels intrusive, like you are disturbing something important. Silence spreads in strange ways. It clings to corners. It pools near stairwells. It thickens around closed doors. You pass a guard post that should be occupied. It is not. The bench is empty. The torch burns low, unattended. This is not an accident. Accidents are noisy. Someone notices. Someone corrects. This has been allowed. Your mind runs through possibilities because it has been trained to. A shift change gone wrong. A messenger delayed. A deliberate clearing of space. None of them are comforting. In a castle, people do not vanish without reason. They are reassigned, removed, or repositioned. Silence usually means the repositioning is not finished yet. You remember the stories, the ones told quietly and always about someone else. The ruler who walked into a silent hall and never walked out again. The court that grew quiet before a coup like animals sensing weather. You remind yourself that you are not in a story. You are in charge. This is your castle. The silence does not care. You reach a familiar intersection of corridors and realize you cannot hear the kitchens. There should be noise, clattering, voices, impatience. The kitchens are the loudest truth in any castle. Their silence feels deliberate, staged, like a curtain drawn too early. Someone wanted this stretch of time to be empty. You consider calling out. You do not. Calling attention to silence gives it power. Instead, you listen harder, straining for any sign of life. Finally, you hear it. A whisper of movement, fabric against stone, a breath that does not belong to you. Relief comes quickly, followed by suspicion. If someone is hiding, they are choosing when to be seen. Moments later, sound returns all at once. Footsteps, voices, laughter that arrives slightly too late. The castle exhales, and with it, your body does too. Servants appear where none were moments ago. Guards resume their posts with practiced normalcy. Someone explains the quiet as a misunderstanding, a delay, a perfectly reasonable occurrence. You nod. You accept the explanation. You are not foolish enough to challenge it in public. But you remember, that night, lying awake in a room that never truly empties, you think about the silence and what it meant. Not danger itself, but preparation. Not chaos, but coordination. The castle does not go quiet by accident. It goes quiet when something is being arranged. From then on, you listen differently. You notice when the noise dips, when conversations end too cleanly, when footsteps avoid certain halls. You learn to trust sound more than sight, because sound is harder to control completely. Silence, you understand now, is not the absence of life. It is the presence of intention. You learn that eating is never just eating. It is a negotiation with unseen hands and unspoken intentions. The moment a plate is set before you, your mind begins its quiet inventory. Who prepared this? Who paid for it? Who benefits if you finish it and who benefits if you do not? Hunger becomes secondary to calculation. Food arrives dressed as generosity. Roasted meats gleam under candlelight. Sauces shimmer like promises. Bread is torn theatrically, steam rising as if to prove its innocence. Everyone watches you accept it. Everyone watches you hesitate. They pretend not to notice, which is how you know they are noticing everything. You take small bites at first, not because you are cautious, but because caution is visible. You chew slowly, giving your body time to object. Nothing happens. That does not reassure you. Poison is patient. It waits. It convinces you that this time is different. You learn the patterns. Dishes prepared by the same household too often. Wine poured with too much enthusiasm. Cups refilled before you finish the last sip. Generosity can be aggressive. You learn to pace yourself so that others cannot pace you. You accept food without committing to it. You taste without indulging. You survive meals by turning them into rituals instead of nourishment. The cup is worse. Wine is expected. Water is suspicious. Refusing a drink is a public insult unless you explain it carefully, and explanations invite questions. So you drink. You always drink. Just not much. You wet your lips. You take a ceremonial sip. You lower the cup at exactly the right moment so it looks intentional rather than fearful. You never finish a cup unless you poured it yourself. And even then you hesitate. Somewhere in the room, someone is watching how much you drink, not because they care about your health, but because they care about opportunity. A ruler who drinks deeply is a ruler who might speak freely. A ruler who drinks lightly is a ruler who remembers everything said around them. Servants become part of your defense. You watch who carries what. You notice hands that shake and hands that are too steady. You develop preferences for certain attendants, then force yourself to rotate them, because familiarity breeds predictability, and predictability breeds vulnerability. You trust people in layers, like armor that can be removed quickly if it begins to chafe. At feasts, you learn to mirror. If a powerful guest eats heartily, you follow suit just enough to appear aligned. If someone important pushes food aside, you do the same, quietly, as if the idea occurred to you independently. Eating becomes choreography. Every bite is a step. Every pause is a signal. There are moments when you forget. A long day, a good mood, a dish that smells like something you remember from before. Power complicated everything. You lean in, take a proper bite, and for a second, you are just a person enjoying food. Then the room shifts. Someone smiles too quickly. Someone looks disappointed. The spell breaks. You slow down again. You think about how absurd it all is. You command armies. You sign laws. You decide fates. And yet here you are, suspicious of bread. But the castle teaches you quickly that power does not protect you from small things. Small things are how power ends most often. At night, you replay meals in your head. The taste that lingered too long. The cup that felt heavier than usual. The servant who avoided your eyes. Nothing ever comes of it, until it does. The absence of consequence does not bring peace. It sharpens your attention for next time. You begin to understand why rulers grow thin despite endless feasts. It is not illness, it is vigilance. Constant restraint, disguised as moderation. You eat enough to live, you drink enough to be polite. You never forget that both are privileges extended to you by people who might withdraw them creatively. Eventually, the fear dulls into habit. You stop feeling suspicious and start feeling prepared. The cup no longer tempts you. The plate no longer comforts you. Food becomes background noise to the real business of staying alive. Trust, you learn, is a luxury best enjoyed away from the table. Because in a castle, the simplest meal can carry the longest memory. You learn that ceremonies are not celebrations. They are endurance rituals designed to see who breaks first, and it is never supposed to be you. The war may have been decided in a muddy field in an afternoon, but the ceremony to acknowledge it will last longer than the memory of why anyone was fighting in the first place. It begins early and refuses to end politely. Bells ring with enthusiasm that feels personal. Trumpets announce things everyone already knows. You are dressed again in layers meant to communicate permanence rather than mercy. By the time you reach the ceremonial hall, your body already understands what is coming, and it objects quietly. The space is packed with people who have trained their faces for this moment. Nobles look solemn, clergy look inspired, and everyone else looks determined not to faint. Candles burn aggressively, adding heat and smoke to an already crowded room. The air smells like wax, incense, wool, and ambition. You take your place where you are meant to be seen, and the performance begins. Someone starts reading. They do not rush. They never rush. Each word is delivered as if it might be the last important one spoken that day, even though you know there are many more coming. Titles are listed in full. Lineage is recited back to the beginning of time, or at least to the point where accuracy becomes optional. You stand or sit or kneel at the correct moments, trusting that someone will signal you if you forget. Minutes turn into something heavier. Your legs ache, your back tightens. You shift your weight carefully, because shifting too much suggests impatience, and impatience suggests disrespect. You listen to prayers that loop back on themselves. You watch smoke curl toward the ceiling and envy its freedom. The worst part is knowing this is only the opening. After the reading comes the blessing. After the blessing comes the oath. After the oath comes another reading, just in case anyone missed the point the first time. Each segment feels final, and none of them are. Applause breaks out sporadically, sometimes too early, sometimes too late. No one is quite sure when enthusiasm is required, but everyone tries anyway. You begin to lose track of what the ceremony is for. Victory, alliance, coronation, forgiveness. It all blends together under the weight of ritual. At some point, you are handed something symbolic, a sword, a staff, a scroll. You hold it carefully, aware that dropping it would be remembered longer than the entire event. The clergy speak next, and they speak thoroughly. Their words rise and fall like waves, repetitive and unstoppable. You nod occasionally to signal comprehension, even when the message has wandered far from anything actionable. The crowd listens with the patience of people who have no choice. Somewhere behind you, someone stifles a cough and is immediately corrected by a glare. Time stretches in unnatural ways. You think about the actual war that preceded this moment, the chaos, the shouting, the decisions made quickly and badly. That part was fast. This part is eternal. You would trade a dozen battles for one less hour of standing perfectly still while someone explains what just happened in poetic detail. Your feet begin to tingle. This is not addressed. Your hands sweat inside gloves designed to look impressive and feel unforgiving. You resist the urge to flex your fingers. Every movement is visible. Every movement means something to someone. When the music starts, it is triumphant and relentless. The notes bounce off stone walls and linger like they intend to stay forever. You smile because smiling is expected now. You smile longer than feels natural. Someone notices and smiles back with relief. Your smile has reassured them that everything is proceeding correctly. By the time the final words are spoken, the room feels lighter, not because it is over, but because people sense the possibility of sitting down soon. The last gesture is performed. The last blessing is given. The last cheer rises. Slightly delayed but enthusiastic. It is done. Except it is not. There is always a procession afterward. Always a walk. Always another space where people must see you one more time to feel satisfied. You move through it all, like a relic, being transported carefully, nodding, acknowledging, enduring. Later, when you are finally alone enough to admit it, your body feels hollowed out by stillness. You are more exhausted now than you were after any battlefield. Wars end quickly. Ceremonies make sure you never forget them. You learn quickly that children in a castle are never just children. They are investments with faces, futures wrapped in soft linen and watched more closely than the treasury. From the moment they can sit upright without assistance, they are being evaluated, corrected, and quietly measured against expectations they did not choose. Nurseries are calm places on the surface. Warm tapestries, carved toys, gentle songs hummed by nurses who never forget where they are. But even here, nothing is casual. Who holds the child matters. Who teaches the first words matters. Who is allowed to linger near the cradle matters most of all. Love exists, but it is supervised. You watch the children learn early that attention is currency. A smile earns praise. Silence earns concern. Curiosity is encouraged only when it points in the right direction. They are praised for obedience long before they understand why obedience feels heavy. Their names are spoken with care, especially in rooms where walls are known to listen. Education begins almost immediately. Letters, prayers, histories that flatter the living and soften the dead. They learn which ancestors to admire and which to mention carefully. Mistakes are corrected gently but firmly, because habits formed young become liabilities later. No one says this aloud, but everyone behaves as if the child is already being negotiated over. Affection is real, but it is never private. Every embrace is witnessed. Every tear is noted. Comfort is given, but never in a way that suggests softness might interfere with usefulness. When a child cries too long, someone reminds them who is watching. When they laugh too freely, someone reminds them where they are. You notice how often the children are moved. A season here, a season there. Sent to be educated by relatives, mentors, or friendly rivals who smile warmly and count quietly. Officially, it is for culture. In truth, it is for balance. No child stays too close to one influence for too long. Loyalty must be distributed carefully. They are dressed beautifully, but practically. Nothing too extravagant for play. Nothing too plain for appearances. Even their clothing teaches them a lesson. You are important, it says, but not yet. You belong here, but you could belong elsewhere just as easily. As they grow older, the lessons sharpen. They are taught to speak clearly and listen longer, to notice who enters a room and who leaves first, to remember names, faces, favors. Games become rehearsals for court life, strategy disguised as fun, competition framed as character building. Someone always wins, and someone always learns why they did not. You see it in their eyes during formal events, the way they stand too still, the way they mimic adult expressions that do not fit yet. They are learning the performance early, practicing for roles that may change without warning. They know they are being seen, even when no one is looking directly at them. And then there is the unspoken truth. Every child understands it eventually, even if no one ever explains it plainly. Their safety is conditional. Their presence can secure peace or provoke conflict. They are cherished, yes, but also counted, loved, but also leveraged. When tensions rise, the children are watched more closely. Doors close more softly. Guards linger near their rooms. Conversations stop when small footsteps approach. The child learns not to ask why. Asking why suggests innocence, and innocence is a phase everyone pretends will last forever. Sometimes, a child is sent away suddenly. A marriage arrangement, an educational opportunity, a gesture of trust between houses. The child smiles, because smiling is expected. The adults smile back, relieved. Everyone pretends this is normal. It is normal. At night, you think about how strange it is that laughter echoes so brightly in a place where futures are weighed so carefully. You wonder whether the children sense it fully or just enough to feel restless. They grow up faster here, not because time moves quickly, but because stillness is not allowed. They are heirs in daylight. They are hostages in silence. And they learn, long before adulthood, that survival is not about strength, but about being valuable enough to keep. You learn that marriage here has very little to do with affection and everything to do with borders, debts, and who needs whom to stop sharpening knives for a few years. Romance is optional. Stability is mandatory. The vows sound personal, but everyone listening knows they are hearing a treaty read aloud with better lighting. From the moment a match is proposed, your body becomes part of a negotiation. Your age, your health, your temperament, all discussed in rooms you are not invited into. People speak warmly about compatibility while quietly tallying land, alliances, and the likelihood of rebellion. Love is mentioned only after everything else has been agreed upon, and even then, it sounds theoretical. When you finally meet your future spouse properly, it is under supervision, always supervision. Conversations are polite measured, and carefully forgettable. You exchange smiles that say nothing and compliments that could apply to anyone. Each of you knows the other is evaluating the same things. Are you useful? Are you manageable? Will this arrangement hold? The wedding itself is a spectacle designed to convince everyone that this was inevitable. Guests cheer, clergy bless. Music fills the space where questions might otherwise linger. You stand side by side, dressed magnificently, already aware that the real work begins after the feast ends. Sharing a bed does not make things simpler, it makes them more complicated. Privacy does not magically appear because the door is closed. Servants still listen, advisors still watch. Even silence feels reported. Intimacy becomes another performance, one with expectations attached to it. Produce airs. Do not produce scandal. Smile convincingly. You learn quickly how much is communicated without words. A turned shoulder can signal displeasure to an entire faction. A shared laugh can reassure a nervous ally. Where you sit together at meals, how often you are seen walking side by side, how you touch in public. All of it matters more than how you feel in private. Arguments are inevitable, but they are conducted carefully. You do not fight like ordinary people. You negotiate. You pause. You remember who benefits from harmony and who profits from discord. Sometimes you lose an argument, not because you are wrong, but because winning it would cost too much elsewhere. At night, lying beside someone who is both partner and political reality, you become acutely aware of how strange this arrangement is. You share warmth, space, and breath with a person whose presence stabilizes your rule. Trust is built slowly, if at all. Affection arrives cautiously, like a guest unsure of their welcome. There are moments of genuine connection, shared jokes whispered after long days, mutual exhaustion that softens edges, a sense of companionship born from surviving the same pressures. These moments matter more than they should, because they are not guaranteed. And then there are moments when you remember exactly what this marriage represents. A letter arrives, a rumor spreads, a distant cousin begins making speeches. Suddenly the tone shifts. Your shared bedroom becomes a council chamber with better furniture. Decisions are made quietly, sometimes without agreement, always with consequences. Children are discussed early and often, not as dreams, but as assurances. An heir means continuity. Continuity means fewer uprisings. You learn to speak about future children with optimism, regardless of how you feel about the process required to produce them. You notice how carefully your spouse manages their own behavior. They, too, are being watched. They, too, are balancing loyalties. You are not enemies, but you are not free. You are two individuals tied together so tightly that separating your interests becomes dangerous. Over time, you develop a rhythm, a way of coexisting that minimizes damage. You learn which topics to avoid late at night, which gestures calm rather than inflame, which silences are peaceful and which are tactical. It is not romance as the stories describe it, but it is something durable. Marriage, you understand now, is not about happiness. It is about making sure fewer people want you both dead at the same time. You discover that silence is a myth invented by people who have never lived inside stone walls filled with ambition. From the moment you wake until long after you pretend to sleep, the castle breathes around you, loud and restless, never letting you forget that you are not alone and never truly will be. Footsteps come first. They echo through corridors at all hours, boots on stone, slippers on rushes, servants moving with purpose and guards pacing with suspicion. You begin to recognize individuals by the rhythm of their steps, the heavy certainty of a veteran guard, the quick, nervous pace of a messenger carrying news he hopes is not fatal, the careful tread of someone who does not want to be noticed but very much wants to hear. Above that comes prayer. Soft murmurs from chapels tucked into corners of the castle, voices rising and falling like a tide that never quite recedes. Bells ring to mark hours you already feel in your bones. Someone is always asking for forgiveness, protection, or advantage. Often all three at once. You learn to sleep through it, not because it fades, but because resisting it is pointless. Then there are the whispers. They slide through rooms like drafts, carried by servants, echoed by courtiers, refined by repetition. Whispers do not need volume to travel. They need interest. You catch fragments as you walk. A name, a doubt, a speculation that grows sharper each time it is retold. By the time it reaches you, it barely resembles its original shape. Even meals are loud. Plates clatter, chairs scrape. Conversations overlap in layers, polite voices masking sharper ones underneath. Laughter arrives on cue and fades just as quickly. You learn to hear what is not said. Pauses linger too long. Someone lowers their voice when you pass. Someone else raises theirs, eager to be noticed. At night, the noise changes but never stops. Fires crackle. Wind presses against shutters. Guards trade murmured updates in the halls. Somewhere nearby, a door opens quietly and closes even more quietly. You lie still, listening, not because you expect danger every night, but because awareness has become habit. Your own movements add to the soundscape. The rustle of fabric when you turn, the soft clink of something symbolic you forgot you were wearing. You realize that even you are never silent here. Your presence announces itself constantly, whether you intend it to or not. You begin to understand how the noise shapes behavior. It keeps people alert. It keeps them uneasy. In a place where nothing is quiet, secrets have to work harder. Every whispered plan competes with 100 other sounds, and the ones that survive are usually the most persistent or the most dangerous. Sometimes the noise feels comforting. It reminds you that the castle is alive, that routines continue, that order has not collapsed overnight. A silent castle would mean something had gone terribly wrong. Silence would mean everyone is waiting. Other times, the noise presses in on you until you feel hollowed out by it. You long for a moment where your thoughts are not competing with the world around you. You retreat to smaller rooms, thicker walls, quieter corners, but even there the sound finds you. Stone carries echoes faithfully. You notice how people use noise as cover, a loud prayer to hide a private deal, a burst of laughter to smother an argument. Music played slightly too enthusiastically to distract from something happening elsewhere. The castle is not just noisy. It is strategic. Eventually, you stop trying to escape it. You let it wash over you, sorting signal from distraction. You learn which sounds demand attention and which can be ignored. The scrape of steel matters. The fall of a spoon does not. Raised voices mean conflict. Sudden quiet means consequence. On rare occasions, you find yourself in a moment where the noise drops, just briefly. Late at night, early before dawn, a pause between prayers and patrols. The absence feels unnatural, like holding your breath too long. You do not savor it. You brace for what comes next. Because in a castle, noise is life continuing, and when it stops, something else always begins. You learn quickly that sickness does not excuse you from anything. It merely adds another layer to the performance. A ruler who rests is a ruler who invites speculation, and speculation is more contagious than any fever. So you rule anyway, wrapped in wool and dignity, pretending your body is not quietly negotiating its own surrender. The castle does not slow down because you ache. Bells still ring. Messengers still arrive breathless. Councils still expect decisions. You wake with a throat like sandpaper and joints that argue with every movement, and you remind yourself that no one needs to know how much it hurts. They need to know you are present. Servants hover with remedies that smell like forests and desperation. Broths thick enough to suggest hope. Teas brewed from leaves. Someone swore once helped a cousin. You accept them all politely, knowing the real medicine is being seen upright. You sit longer than you should. You stand when sitting would be wiser. You smile through moments where your vision blurs slightly at the edges. Everyone watches your face, not out of concern, but calculation. Are your eyes clear? Is your voice steady? Did your hand tremble when you reached for the cup? They are not looking for proof that you are ill. They are looking for proof that you are failing. You learn to manage symptoms strategically. A cough is swallowed. A wince is delayed until no one is looking. Fatigue is reframed as contemplation. You speak slower, not because you are weak, but because you are thoughtful. You pause often, letting others assume wisdom instead of dizziness. Meetings stretch on cruelly. Advisors argue louder than necessary, filling the room with noise that makes your head throb. You nod at the right moments, interject sparingly, conserving energy like a miser hoarding coins. You discover that authority can be maintained with fewer words than you thought, as long as those words land cleanly. There is always someone who suggests you rest. They say it kindly. They say it publicly. You thank them and decline. Resting openly would invite others to imagine a future without you. You are not interested in their creativity. At meals, you eat just enough to be seen eating. Appetite is optional. Appearance is not. You lift the fork, take a measured bite, and set it down again. Someone notices and feels reassured. The meal continues. The hardest moments come at night, when the castle quiets just enough for your body to demand attention. Pain sharpens, fevers creep. You lie awake, listening to footsteps and thinking about how strange it is that your health has become a political variable. You are not allowed the dignity of collapse. If you fall, it must be discreet. Sometimes the illness wins small victories. Your voice cracks mid-sentence. You sit down too quickly. A silence stretches uncomfortably as the room adjusts. You recover, smooth it over, continue. The moment passes, but it is remembered. You become intimate with endurance. You learn exactly how much discomfort you can carry before it shows. You learn to schedule harder decisions earlier in the day, when strength is highest. You push less urgent matters away, framing it as delegation rather than survival. People praise your fortitude. They whisper about your resilience. They say you are strong. You let them believe it is effortless. Strength, you have learned, is mostly concealment. There are rulers who die in bed, surrounded by physicians and prayers. There are others who die seated in council, documents unfinished, posture intact. You understand now why some choose the latter. Illness may take you, but it will not be allowed to interrupt. You rule through the sickness. You sign, decide, nod, and endure. The castle continues to function because you do not allow it to see you falter. Later, when you are alone enough to admit it, you acknowledge the truth quietly. Power does not heal you. It only insists you pretend you already are. You learn quickly that castles do not care about comfort. They care about survival, intimidation, and the vague promise that anyone attacking from the outside will suffer more than you do on the inside. Warmth is an afterthought, a rumor passed down by people who do not live in stone. From the outside, the walls look reassuring, thick, solid, impressive. They hold back enemies, storms, and most of the world. What they do not hold is heat. Stone remembers winter the way a grudge remembers an insult. Even after the sun has done its best, the chill lingers, creeping up from floors, seeping into bones, settling in joints like it plans to stay forever. You wake wrapped in layers that feel ceremonial rather than effective. Wool blankets scratch and trap cold air as efficiently as they trap warmth. The room smells faintly of damp stone and old smoke. Somewhere nearby, a fire crackles, but it is a suggestion, not a solution. Fire in a castle is decorative unless you are sitting directly inside it. You step onto the floor, and the cold greets you immediately, sharp and personal. Slippers help a little. Rugs help less than advertised. Every step reminds you that this building was designed to endure sieges, not mornings. You move quickly, because lingering is an invitation for discomfort to settle in. The corridors are worse. Long, narrow, and determined to funnel drafts exactly where you do not want them. Wind sneaks in through arrow slits and forgotten cracks, whispering its way along stone passages like it has business there. You pull your cloak tighter, aware that everyone else is doing the same and pretending this is normal. Servants move through the cold with practiced efficiency. They do not complain. Complaining does nothing. They have learned how to layer properly, how to keep hands busy so they do not go numb, how to treat warmth as a rare and temporary gift. You envy their adaptation even as you outrank them. Meetings take place in rooms large enough to echo but too large to heat properly. Fires blaze in hearths the size of small boats, and still the air remains sharp. You sit upright, posture immaculate, while your feet slowly lose sensation. No one mentions it. A ruler shivering openly would suggest poor planning. You notice how people cluster near heat sources whenever protocol allows. Advisors drift closer to the fire while speaking, then retreat to give others a turn. Everyone pretends this is coincidence. You pretend not to notice. Outside, on clear days, the sun feels almost kind. You walk along battlements and feel warmth on your face, brief and fragile but real. The irony does not escape you. The place built to protect you from the world offers less comfort than the world itself. You linger longer than necessary, until someone reminds you gently of appearances. At night, the cold deepens. Fires die down. Stone exhales the chill it has been saving all day. You sleep layered like an archive, fabric over fabric, hoping to trap enough heat to make rest possible. Your breath fogs faintly in the dark. You listen to the castle settle, wood contracting, stone shifting, the building adjusting to the temperature with no regard for the people inside it. You learn small strategies. Hot drinks before bed, warm stones wrapped in cloth, moving tapestries slightly to block drafts. None of it solves the problem. It only makes it survivable. The cold is not an enemy you defeat. It is a condition you endure. Visitors comment on it occasionally, usually after their first night. They laugh, assuming it is part of the charm. You smile and agree. Charm is an easy word for discomfort you have accepted. Over time, the cold becomes background noise. Your body adjusts in small ways. Your tolerance increases. Your expectations lower. Warmth becomes something you notice rather than assume. A sunny patch on the floor. A well-placed fire. Another person standing close enough to share heat without acknowledging it. You understand now why so many rulers favored heavy clothing, even indoors. It was not fashion. It was armor against the environment. The castle will keep you safe from armies, but it will never try to keep you comfortable. And in a strange way, that feels honest. Because power, like stone, is solid, impressive, and always a little colder than you expect. You learn that hospitality in a castle is a controlled gamble dressed up as courtesy. Guests arrive smiling, cloaked in fine fabric and plausible intentions, and you greet them as if you are not quietly wondering which one might prefer you horizontal. The drawbridge lowers, the gates open, and with them comes the understanding that every welcome is also an inspection. They arrive with gifts that are heavy with meaning. Wine from a disputed valley, tapestries woven with symbols that could be compliments or warnings depending on how closely you look. Horses bred for speed, weapons meant to be admired but not used, at least not today. You accept everything graciously, thanking them as if generosity is never strategic. Meals are the first test. You seat guests carefully, allies near enough to feel valued, rivals close enough to be watched. Conversation flows politely, skimming safely over shared victories and mutual enemies that no longer exist. Laughter arrives on schedule. You laugh too, because refusing to laugh is a statement, and statements are expensive. You watch hands more than faces. Who reaches for what? Who hesitates before drinking? Who declines a dish without explanation? These details matter. An assassin does not always carry a blade. Sometimes they carry patience and an excellent memory. The castle shifts to accommodate them. Extra guards appear in corridors. Servants rotate more frequently. Doors that are usually unlocked become suggestions rather than invitations. You do not announce these changes. You let guests believe they are imagined, because imagined defenses still work. At night, the castle feels different. Louder in some places, quieter in others. Footsteps echo where they normally do not. Someone laughs too late. Someone else prays too early. You sleep lightly, if at all, aware that your guests are doing the same. Everyone rests with one eye open and one ear tuned for opportunity. During the day, you host hunts, games, and tours. Distractions meant to reassure and observe at the same time. You watch how guests treat your servants, how they react to delays, how they behave when something small goes wrong. People reveal more when they think nothing important is happening. Private conversations follow. Always private, never truly alone. You speak in measured tones about cooperation, mutual benefit, and shared futures. Promises are suggested rather than stated. Threats are wrapped in concern. You nod, smile, and store every word for later examination. Some guests stay longer than expected. This is either a sign of comfort or calculation. You treat it as both. You remain welcoming without becoming familiar. Familiarity invites assumptions, and assumptions invite mistakes. There are moments when you catch yourself enjoying the performance, the chess of it all, the layered politeness, the satisfaction of navigating danger without drawing blood. Then you remember that the stakes are not abstract. They are you, breathing, upright, and necessary to too many plans. Departures are watched as closely as arrivals. You note who leaves abruptly and who lingers at the gate, who looks relieved and who looks disappointed. Farewells are warm. Everyone promises to write. Everyone means something different by that. When the gates close again and the castle exhales, you allow yourself a moment of stillness. No celebration, no visible relief. Surviving a visit is not a victory. It is the baseline. You understand now why feasts are lavish and beds are hard. Hospitality is not kindness. It is theater with consequences. You play your role impeccably because the audience includes people who would love an excuse to replace you. In the end, you learn to enjoy guests without trusting them, to welcome smiles without believing them, to host generously while keeping your guard close. Because in a castle, every ally arrives as a question, and every question sharpens the knife just a little more. You learn that laughter is not relief, it is exposure. Anger is predictable. Anger announces itself, flares, burns, and can be answered with calm or force. Laughter slips past defenses, disarms rooms, and leaves things open that were meant to stay closed. At first, laughter feels like a gift, a rare moment where shoulders lower and faces soften. Someone tells a joke at court and the room exhales. You laugh because everyone else does. You laugh because refusing would look stiff, suspicious, or worse, humorless. Humorlessness is interpreted as cruelty here, even when it is only caution. But laughter travels. It lingers in corners. It repeats itself in altered forms. The joke told at the high table becomes a rumor by the servant's stairs, and by morning it has teeth. Someone laughs at the wrong moment, and suddenly the story is not about humor, but about disrespect. You begin to notice who laughs first and who laughs last. The first laugh sets permission. The last laugh measures safety. Those in between are gauging the room, trying to land on the correct side of amusement. A misplaced chuckle can undo weeks of careful neutrality. You discover that laughter is remembered. A sharp remark delivered with a smile cuts deeper than an insult shouted in rage. People forgive anger if it seems justified. They never forget being laughed at, especially if they are not sure whether they were meant to be. You learn to laugh deliberately. Not too loudly, not too often. Enough to seem human, never enough to seem careless. Your laughter becomes a tool, measured and placed. You laugh to reward loyalty. You laugh to ease tension. You never laugh at someone who cannot afford to be laughed at. There are moments when you forget yourself. A genuine laugh escapes, loud and unguarded. The room freezes for half a breath as everyone recalibrates. Then laughter follows, polite and controlled. Later, someone will mention it to someone else. It will be interpreted. It always is. Jesters exist for a reason. They laugh so you do not have to. They say dangerous things wrapped in absurdity, absorbing the consequences on your behalf. You keep them close, not for entertainment, but for insulation. When the joke lands badly, it is not your voice that carried it. You notice how laughter shifts during negotiations. A shared laugh suggests common ground. A withheld one signals resistance. You use it sparingly, like spice. Too much ruins the dish. Too little makes it dry and uninviting. Anger clears rooms. Laughter fills them. Filled rooms are harder to control. People grow bold when they feel comfortable. They speak freely. They test boundaries. They forget where they are. That forgetfulness is dangerous. At feasts, laughter rises with the wine. You watch it carefully, ready to intervene with a raised hand or a change of subject. You have seen laughter turn sharp when it gains momentum. You have seen jokes become accusations without ever changing words. You also learn how laughter can wound privately. A shared joke between two people can exclude a third. A glance exchanged over humor can undermine authority more effectively than open defiance. You learn to spot it and stop it without drawing attention to it. At night, you think about how strange it is that joy requires as much control as fury. You miss laughing without consequence. You miss the simplicity of finding something funny and letting it be that. But you adapt. You always adapt. You learn that anger shows you where enemies stand. Laughter shows you where they are hiding. And so you smile carefully, laugh precisely, and never forget that even the lightest sound can echo loudly in stone halls that remember everything. You learn that sleep in a castle is not rest. It is a negotiation with your own thoughts conducted in a room that never truly empties. You lie down because the day has ended, not because your body agrees. The bed is large, impressive, and faintly hostile, layered with fabric meant to signal status rather than comfort. Somewhere nearby, someone is awake on purpose. You close your eyes and immediately hear everything. The castle settles, which sounds suspiciously like movement. Wood creaks, stone sighs. A guard coughs at a distance that feels intentional. You tell yourself this is normal. It is. That does not help. Your mind, finally unoccupied, begins its nightly inventory. Conversations replay themselves, stripped of politeness and re-examined for meaning. A pause that lasted too long. A smile that arrived too quickly. A promise that felt heavier than it sounded. You tell yourself you will think about it tomorrow. Tomorrow arrives early here. Sleep comes in fragments. You drift, surface, drift again. Each time you wake, you check the room without opening your eyes, listening for anything out of place. Nothing ever is. That does not reassure you. If something were wrong, it would be subtle. The hour before dawn is the worst. The castle grows quiet in a way that feels unfinished. You lie still, counting breaths, waiting for the bells that mark the next obligation. They will come whether you are ready or not. They always do. When sleep finally deepens, it does so briefly and without warning. Dreams are shallow and practical. You dream of walking corridors that never end, of speaking and being heard too clearly, of doors that close just before you reach them. You wake before the dreams finish, heart alert, body unconvinced it was ever resting. Morning arrives uninvited. Light creeps through narrow windows, cold and judgmental. You wake earlier than necessary because your body has learned that stillness invites vulnerability. Better to rise before you are required. Better to be seen awake than discovered sleeping. Servants appear quietly, as if they have been waiting for the exact moment you open your eyes. Water is brought. Clothes are laid out. Someone comments on the weather. You respond appropriately, even though the day has not officially begun yet. You notice how tired everyone looks. Guards with shadows under their eyes. Advisors rubbing temples while pretending to be energized by purpose. This place does not sleep well, collectively or individually. It rests in shifts. You learn to function on less sleep, less recovery, less margin for error. Your body adapts because it must. Fatigue becomes a background condition rather than a problem to solve. You drink more warm liquids. You sit when protocol allows. You learn which meetings can survive a quieter version of you. There is humor in it, occasionally. Someone jokes about early mornings and duty. You smile because smiling suggests you are managing just fine. You are just not comfortably. At night, you still hope for rest. Hope is stubborn. You lie down believing tonight might be different. Sometimes it is. Usually it is not. The castle does not care either way. You come to understand that exhaustion has advantages. It dulls impatience. It encourages brevity. It strips away unnecessary reactions. A tired ruler is often a quieter one, and quiet can be mistaken for depth. But there are moments, rare and sharp, when you feel the weight of it fully, when your body asks for something you cannot give it, when you imagine sleeping without listening, waking without calculating. The thought passes. It always does. You rise again before the bells. You dress. You step into another day. Sleep, you realize, is not something you get here. It is something you survive without. You learn that boredom is not harmless. It does not arrive loudly or demand attention. It settles in quietly, disguised as comfort, and begins to erode judgment from the inside. Armies can be reasoned with. Plagues can be prayed against. Boredom convinces you that rules are optional and consequences negotiable. Your days are full, technically. Councils, petitions, meals that stretch on forever. But much of it is repetition wearing a new cloak. The same disputes framed with different names, the same grievances polished and presented as urgent. You listen, you decide, you dismiss, and the cycle resets with impressive consistency. When nothing demands immediate action, your mind wanders. Wandering is dangerous. It looks for stimulation in places it should not. A risky suggestion suddenly sounds clever. A forbidden conversation feels educational. You catch yourself leaning toward novelty for no better reason than the day feels long. The castle is especially good at breeding boredom. Its routines are rigid, its rules predictable. Everything happens at set hours, announced by bells that sound equally indifferent to joy or disaster. You begin to anticipate events not because you enjoy them, but because anticipating them gives the illusion of progress. You notice how boredom affects others first. A bored noble becomes reckless. A bored advisor grows theatrical. A bored courtier stirs rumors just to see what happens. Idle minds in a castle do not stay idle for long. They manufacture interest. You manage your own boredom carefully. You ration stimulation the way others ration food. Too much excitement draws attention. Too little makes you restless. You learn to find small variations in familiar patterns. A different route through the corridors. A new seating arrangement at dinner. A subtle change in tone during council that keeps everyone alert. Sometimes boredom whispers that you deserve more. More pleasure, more indulgence, more freedom. It reminds you of everything you cannot do openly and suggests you try quietly. This is how scandals begin. Not with passion, but with nothing to do. You distract yourself with projects, building campaigns, revisions to laws no one asked for, patronage of artists whose work gives you something to think about other than the walls. You commission things slowly, deliberately, stretching interest across months instead of consuming it all at once. You also learn the value of observation. Watching people closely becomes entertainment and defense at the same time. Who grows bored fastest? Who fills silence with ambition? Who cannot stand still without inventing trouble? Boredom reveals character the way pressure reveals flaws. There are days when the boredom feels heavier than responsibility. When you would welcome a crisis simply to break the monotony, you do not say this aloud. Wanting trouble is a luxury best kept private. Trouble arrives without invitations anyway. You develop rituals that help. Reading texts that require effort. Walking the battlements slowly. Counting steps. Watching the horizon change almost imperceptibly. You learn to appreciate slow things. They steady you. They remind you that not every moment needs to be interesting to be important. Still, boredom never leaves completely. It waits. It watches. It slips into moments of comfort and asks dangerous questions. What if you tried something new? What if you ignored advice just once? What if nothing bad happened? You answer those questions with discipline rather than curiosity. You remind yourself that boredom has ended more reigns than violence ever did. Kings and queens do not fall because they are overwhelmed. They fall because they are understimulated. So, you manage it like any other threat. You acknowledge it. You limit it. You never underestimate it. Because in a castle, boredom does not kill you quickly. It convinces you to do it yourself. You rule a realm that exists mostly in reports, maps, and the careful language of people who want something from you. The land stretches far beyond the castle walls, but you experience it as ink on parchment and gestures traced over tables. Rivers become lines, Villages become dots. Forests become concerns. You nod thoughtfully, as if nodding might reach them. Messengers arrive, dusty and breathless, carrying news from places you have never seen and may never visit. They describe roads washed out by rain, harvests ruined by frost, disputes sparked by boundaries no one remembers drawing. You listen closely, because this is how your kingdom speaks to you, indirectly, politely, through intermediaries who know exactly how much detail to include and how much to omit. Maps lie to you beautifully. They make everything look manageable. Proportions behave. Distances feel reasonable. You forget that between two markings lie days of travel, mud, hunger, and people whose names never reach your ears. You trace a finger along a border and remind yourself that this line represents lives lived entirely without your presence. When you do travel, it is ceremonial and selective. Roads are cleared ahead of you. Villages are cleaned for your arrival. The people chosen to greet you have been practicing their gratitude for weeks. They bow, cheer, and present gifts that represent their best moments, not their daily reality. You smile, accept, and move on before the illusion cracks. You notice how different the air feels beyond the castle. Less heavy, less watched, and yet you are never really there. You are a symbol moving through space, surrounded by guards, schedules, and expectations. The land sees you, but you do not see it back. Not fully. Most of your ruling happens indoors. Advisors argue about places they know as little as you do, drawing conclusions from second-hand accounts and inherited opinions. You make decisions that reshape lives in regions you could not find without assistance. You wonder sometimes if the people affected imagine you as a distant force or a person who might understand them if given the chance. Petitions arrive from far away, written in careful script by someone who hopes you will notice the urgency buried beneath formality. You read them late at night, imagining faces behind the words. It helps. It also hurts. You cannot meet everyone. You cannot know everything. You rule anyway. There are names you recognize without ever seeing the faces. Lords loyal and restless, towns prosperous and resentful, regions that send more complaints than taxes, others that stay silent long enough to worry you. Silence from far away is never reassuring. You learn to rely on representatives, governors, stewards, officials whose loyalty you assume because the alternative is exhausting. You reward competence and punish failure based on outcomes you can barely verify. Trust becomes a practical necessity rather than a moral choice. Sometimes you imagine walking through a random village unannounced, sitting at a table that does not expect you, hearing what people say when they do not know who you are. The thought is comforting and dangerous. Comforting because it suggests connection. Dangerous because it would shatter the structure that allows you to rule it all. You accept that your relationship with the land is abstract. You care deeply, sincerely, but from a distance that feels unnatural. You send aid when disaster strikes. You issue decrees meant to protect people you will never meet. You hope the words reach them intact. At night, you think about how strange it is to be responsible for so much you cannot touch. You own fields you have never walked. You command loyalty from people who would not recognize you without ceremony. Your power is vast and oddly impersonal, and yet, this is how it works. The castle is the center not because it understands everything, but because it must decide anyway. You rule from a place of remove, trusting that the structure holds. You govern a land you rarely see, and you carry the quiet weight of people who may never know your face, only the consequences of your choices. You learn that luxury here is not designed to please you. It is designed to overwhelm anyone watching. Comfort is personal and quiet. Luxury is loud, heavy, and mildly hostile. The castle does not ask what feels good. It asks what looks impressive from a distance. Your chambers are enormous, which sounds appealing until you try to cross them barefoot on a cold morning. The ceilings soar, trapping heat far above your head where it cannot help you. Tapestries line the walls, beautiful and thick, depicting victories you had nothing to do with. They block drafts slightly and listen constantly. Furniture is carved, gilded, inlaid, and deeply uninterested in your spine. Chairs are stiff because softness suggests indulgence. Beds are vast because size implies importance, not because anyone tested how well they support sleep. Tables are long enough to feed armies, which you do not, and awkward to use for anything small or human. You are surrounded by objects meant to announce wealth rather than serve a purpose. Goblets heavy enough to tire your wrist, plates decorated so elaborately that food feels like an afterthought, clothing stitched with precious metals that itch, pinch, and remind you that looking powerful often feels ridiculous. Servants adjust things constantly, but never toward comfort. Cushions are repositioned to look symmetrical. Curtains are drawn to frame windows properly, not to block light. Fires are lit where they are most visible, not where they would actually warm the room. Everything is arranged for an audience that may or may not be present. You notice how little of this luxury you would choose if choice were involved. You would prefer a smaller room that holds heat, a chair that forgives posture, a cup that does not feel like it could double as a weapon. These preferences remain private. Expressing them would sound ungrateful, or, worse, eccentric. At feasts, abundance replaces satisfaction. More courses than you can remember, more flavors than you can appreciate. You are expected to marvel at quantity rather than quality. Eating well matters less than being seen eating extravagantly. Leaving the table full is not the goal. Leaving it impressed is. Clothing follows the same logic. Layers upon layers, each one signaling rank, wealth, and patience. You are dressed like an announcement. Movement becomes deliberate because the garments demand it. Comfort would let you forget yourself. Luxury insists you remain aware. Bathing, when it happens, is elaborate and public enough to defeat the purpose. Scents are layered until they argue with one another. Oils coat the skin without truly cleaning it. The process takes hours and leaves you wondering why something so indulgent feels so incomplete. You begin to understand that luxury here is not about pleasure. It is about reassurance. It reassures everyone watching that the system is working, that wealth exists, that power is concentrated exactly where it should be. Your discomfort is irrelevant as long as the message lands. There is humor in it, if you allow yourself to see it. The richest people in the land huddled near fires, pretending not to shiver. The most powerful individuals perched uncomfortably on furniture designed to impress peasants who will never see it. You smile privately at the absurdity, careful not to let it show. Occasionally, you encounter real comfort by accident. A simple chair in a forgotten room, a plain cloak that fits correctly, a quiet corner where the stone holds warmth instead of cold. These moments feel almost illicit, like discovering a secret the castle did not intend to share. You do not linger too long. Comfort makes you forget where you are. Forgetting is dangerous. Over time, you adjust. Your body learns what to expect. Your standards recalibrate. Excess becomes background noise. You stop asking whether something feels good and start asking whether it looks correct. This shift is subtle and permanent. Luxury, you realize, is not meant to be enjoyed. It is meant to be endured, so everyone else can believe you have everything they do not. You learn that enemies announce themselves. They gather at borders, send letters, raise banners. Fire, rot, and collapse do none of that. They arrive quietly, already inside the walls, patient and uninterested in your title. Fire is the most honest of them. Everyone understands it immediately. The castle is a maze of dry beams, old tapestries, oil-soaked cloth, and open flames treated with casual trust. Candles burn everywhere, more for ceremony than necessity. Hearths roar in rooms built to echo. Torches line corridors that have not been properly cleaned in generations. You walk past them daily, aware that one careless moment could erase centuries. You have seen what fire does to stone that thinks it is invincible. It cracks it, weakens it, turns strength into rubble without malice or intent. You issue endless rules about flame, spacing, watchfulness. They are followed carefully until they are not. All it takes is fatigue, boredom, or confidence. Rot is worse because it hides. It works slowly, politely, pretending to be nothing at all. Wood softens beneath paint. Beams darken where no one looks closely enough. Damp settles into walls and convinces them to forget their purpose. The castle smells faintly of age, and no amount of incense fully masks it. You rely on specialists to tell you where the building is failing. They speak in cautious language, pointing to sections that need attention, repairs that should have happened years ago. Each fix costs money, time, and disruption. You approve what you can and delay what you must. The castle does not argue, it simply waits. Collapse is the most frightening because it feels personal. A ceiling falls, a stair gives way, a tower leans a little more than it did yesterday. These are not attacks, they are reminders. The castle is old, and age does not respect authority. You walk its corridors with a new awareness, noticing hairline cracks, listening for unfamiliar creaks. At night, when the wind presses against the walls, you imagine what would happen if something important decided it had held long enough. You imagine being awake. You imagine being buried. Invasion, by comparison, feels manageable. You can see it coming. You can prepare. You can send people to meet it outside the walls. Fire, rot, and collapse are already inside, already part of the structure you depend on. You cannot exile them. Servants know this fear well. They watch ceilings while they work. They step carefully on older stairs. They know which corridors to avoid after heavy rain. Their knowledge is practical, passed down quietly. You listen to them more than you let on. You learn that the castle survives through constant compromise, patching instead of replacing, supporting instead of rebuilding. Every solution buys time, not permanence. You rule inside a structure that is always negotiating with gravity and decay. There are moments when the fear sharpens. A fire breaks out in a distant wing and is contained just before it spreads. A section of wall sheds stone into the courtyard below, missing people by chance rather than planning. Each time, relief is followed by unease. Next time, luck may not be present. You order inspections. You approve repairs. You stand beneath arches and wonder how many rulers have stood there before you, trusting the same stone to hold. It always has, until it does not. The irony does not escape you. The castle was built to keep danger out. Its greatest threats come from within. You spend more energy protecting it from itself than from any army. At night, when the firelight flickers and shadows stretch across the walls, you listen closely, not for footsteps, for stress, for movement that should not be happening, for the sound of something giving way. You understand now why rulers before you invested so heavily in maintenance and ritual alike. One kept the structure standing. The other distracted everyone from how fragile it really was. You fear fire, rot, and collapse because they do not negotiate. They do not care who you are. And when they finally decide to act, they never ask permission. You notice the smell before you fully understand it. It is not one thing, but a layered presence that follows you from room to room, settling into fabric and memory alike. Smoke is the bass note, always there, clinging to stone and skin, a reminder that fire is never far away and never fully under control. Even rooms without hearths carry it, because the castle breathes as one body and shares everything. Animals contribute next, horses below, dogs everywhere, poultry not far enough away to pretend otherwise. Leather smells like where it came from, because it never forgets. Wool remembers rain, fur remembers warmth and fear. You grow accustomed to it, but never immune. It becomes part of how you recognize home, even when you would hesitate to describe it fondly. Dampness weaves through everything. Stone holds moisture the way it holds cold, patiently and without apology. Rain seeps in through places no one admits exist. Walls sweat quietly. Cellars smell like old earth and secrets that should not be disturbed. Even the upper floors carry a faint reminder that this structure rises from ground that was never meant to host something so heavy. Then there is ambition, which has a smell of its own. It is sharp, metallic, and restless. It lingers in council chambers and hallways just outside closed doors. It smells like ink, wax, and nervous hands. like perfume applied too heavily in hopes of masking something else. You learn to recognize it instinctively, because ambition announces itself long before words do. At first, the combination is overwhelming. You notice it on your clothes at the end of the day, woven into layers you cannot easily wash. You smell it on others when they approach, a shared signature of the place. Everyone carries the castle with them, whether they want to or not. Servants move through it with practiced indifference. They know which smells mean danger and which mean routine. Smoke without flame, damp without flood, animals without panic. They read the air the way others read documents. You learn from them without asking, because asking would sound inexperienced. Feasts intensify everything. Grease joins the smoke. Spices mingle with sweat. The air grows thick with warmth and voices and effort. By the end of the night, the smell clings to your hair and skin, a reminder of abundance that feels heavier than hunger ever did. You wash when you can. It never fully leaves. Some rooms are worse than others. Armories smell like oil and iron and waiting. Chapels smell like wax and quiet desperation. Bedrooms smell like fabric and people trying to rest in spaces that never forget who slept there before. You realize that privacy has a scent too, and it does not last. Outside, the air is cleaner, sharper. Even near the stables, it feels honest in comparison. You linger sometimes on balconies or battlements, breathing deeply, pretending the smell of damp ambition cannot follow you there. It always does. Faint but persistent. You begin to associate moments with smells. Bad news carries a certain sharpness. Political tension smells different from grief, though both linger long after the room empties. Success smells briefly sweet before fading back into smoke and stone. Failure smells like nothing at first, which is how it spreads. Visitors notice the smell immediately. They comment on it politely or pretend not to. You can tell who has lived in castles before by how quickly they stop reacting. Adaptation is quiet. Complaints are louder. Over time, the scent becomes grounding, familiar. It reminds you where you are and what is expected of you. It tells you when something is wrong before anyone speaks. A new smell in an old place draws attention faster than a raised voice. At night, lying awake, you breathe it in without thinking. Smoke, animals, dampness, and desire. The castle's true perfume. It is not pleasant, but it is honest. It tells the story of survival layered over ambition, layered over time. You understand then that the smell is not a flaw. It is the evidence that the castle is alive, crowded with purpose, and never empty enough to forget itself. You begin to notice it slowly, the way you notice weather changing without remembering when the season shifted. A servant who once moved quickly now takes an extra breath before climbing stairs. Another who used to stand through hours of court now leans subtly against a wall when they think no one important is looking. Faces you see every day change while yours appears, deceptively, to stay the same. Servants age in public. You age in mirrors that lie politely. They are there from your earliest days in the castle. They fasten your clothes, steady your steps, correct your posture before anyone else has the chance to notice. They watch you grow into authority while their own bodies absorb the cost of constant motion. They wake before you. They sleep after you. They carry, clean, lift, bend, and listen without ceremony. Time moves differently for them. Each day demands something physical, something repetitive, something that leaves a mark no one records. Stone floors are hard on joints. Drafts settle into bones. Heavy doors do not care who pushes them open. Years pass one task at a time. You see it in hands first. Fingers thicken, knuckles swell, nails crack from water and work. Hands that once moved swiftly now pause before grasping something heavy. They still manage. They always manage. But you notice the effort now. Their faces change too. Lines deepen around mouths that have learned when not to speak. Eyes grow sharper or duller depending on how much hope they can afford to keep. Hair grays quietly under caps and scarves, often unnoticed until someone new joins the household and does a double take. You realize with some discomfort that many of them have spent more years serving this castle than you have spent being important. They remember rulers you know only from portraits. They remember when certain corridors were brighter, when certain tapestries were new, when promises sounded different. Their memories are practical and unsentimental. They do not complain. Complaining would require time and energy better spent finishing the next task. When pain arrives, they adjust around it. When exhaustion deepens, they become more efficient rather than slower. The castle rewards endurance with continued usefulness, not comfort. You age too, of course, but differently. Your aging is discussed in whispers and measured in portraits. You are preserved by layers, routines, and deference. Servants do not have that protection. Their work is visible. Their bodies are honest. Sometimes a servant disappears from your daily orbit, reassigned, retired quietly, ill, dead. The explanation is brief and delivered carefully, as if length would invite discomfort. A new face appears in the same place, younger, quicker, eager. The rhythm continues. You feel a strange guilt you cannot fully articulate. You benefit from their constancy while remaining untouched by its cost. They adjust their pace to match your needs, not the other way around. You rely on them to remember things you forget, to notice details you overlook, to maintain continuity while your attention shifts constantly. Occasionally, one of them looks at you with something like fondness, not admiration, familiarity. They have seen you tired, sick, distracted. They have watched you become who you are. There is pride there, perhaps, or simply acceptance. You wonder if they notice how little you seem to change, if they see the illusion for what it is. Power slows aging by hiding it. Labor accelerates it by revealing everything. At ceremonies, servants stand at the edges, holding objects to maintaining order. You notice which ones no longer stand as straight, which ones shift weight more often, which ones breathe a little heavier after long hours. The ceremony will be remembered. Their effort will not. At night, you think about how many rulers they will outlast, how many changes they will quietly absorb, how the castle remains stable not because of thrones or titles, but because the same hands keep opening the same doors day after day. You are aware that one day you will be gone, replaced by another figure learning the same lessons. Some of these servants will still be here, older, slower, still adjusting, still remembering. They age faster because they carry the castle on their bodies. You age slower because the castle carries you, and the difference is visible to anyone willing to look. You learn that entertainment here is not leisure, it is maintenance, a carefully managed release valve that keeps tension from hardening into something sharp. Games, music, performances, hunts, all of it exists not to delight, but to prevent collapse. The castle schedules amusement the way it schedules meals and prayers. At specific hours, on specific days, people are allowed to relax together under supervision. Laughter is encouraged. Competition is permitted. Emotion is sanctioned, briefly, before being gathered back up and returned to its place. You attend because absence would be noticed. A ruler who skips entertainment looks either sick or afraid, and neither interpretation helps anyone. So you sit through performances with a polite smile, clapping at the correct moments, letting your attention drift just enough to seem natural, but not enough to look bored. Music fills halls designed to echo authority, not melody. Instruments strain against stone that absorbs warmth but reflects sound aggressively. Minstrels play louder than necessary, not because they enjoy it, but because being heard is safer than being ignored. A silent performer is quickly replaced. Jesters dance along a narrow line that everyone pretends not to see. They mock safely, never directly, their humor angled upward just enough to be flattering. When they joke about power, they are really reinforcing it. Their survival depends on knowing exactly when to stop. Games serve a similar function. Board games, dice, contests of wit and endurance. They give people something to win that does not involve territory or influence. They redirect ambition into harmless channels, at least temporarily. You participate sparingly, letting others take the risks that come with victory and the bitterness that comes with loss. Hunts are the most honest form of entertainment. They allow violence without consequence. The rules are clear. The outcome is simple. For a day, tension becomes motion. Fear becomes focus, and everyone returns tired enough to sleep. You understand why they are popular, Even as you recognize their danger, feasts double as entertainment, stretching long into the night. Stories are told, songs are sung, wine flows. Everyone relaxes just enough to remember they are human. You monitor it closely. Too much relaxation invites honesty. Too much honesty invites trouble. You notice how entertainment changes depending on the political weather. In times of stability, it is elaborate and frequent. In times of tension, it becomes more controlled, more symbolic. Celebrations are used to reassure. Distractions are deployed strategically. There is always an audience, even when something is meant to be private. Servants watch. Guards listen. Advisors note who attends, who enjoys themselves too much, who sits quietly in the corner calculating instead of clapping. Entertainment reveals character faster than conflict ever could. You begin to see patterns. Who drinks when they should not? Who laughs too loudly at the wrong joke? Who uses games as an excuse to humiliate rather than compete? These moments matter. They are small, but they accumulate. For you, entertainment becomes work. You manage your reactions the way you manage policy. Smile here, laugh there. Withdraw gracefully before fatigue shows. Your presence sets the tone. If you appear engaged, others relax. If you appear distant, the room tightens. There are rare moments when you forget this. When music catches you unexpectedly. When a story genuinely amuses you. When you laugh without checking who is listening. The feeling is brief and sharp, like stepping into sunlight from a cold room. It fades quickly, replaced by awareness. You realize then that the purpose of entertainment is not escape. It is controlled exposure, a way to bleed off pressure without opening wounds. A ritual that reminds everyone what normal looks like, even if no one fully believes in it. Without it, the castle would grind itself down. Boredom would turn inward. Tension would sharpen. Ambition would look for darker outlets. Entertainment keeps the machine from overheating. You allow yourself to enjoy it just enough to make it convincing. Because here, joy is not spontaneous. It is scheduled, supervised, and essential to survival. You learn that festivals are not gifts. They are strategies wrapped in color, noise, and carefully managed joy. When banners go up and streets fill with music, it is not because life has suddenly improved. It is because attention needs to be redirected somewhere safer. From the castle walls, you watch preparations begin days in advance. Stalls are built, barrels are rolled in. Performers arrive with rehearsed enthusiasm and well-practiced smiles. Extra guards are posted, not to dampen the mood, but to make sure it flows in the correct direction. Celebration, like everything else, is supervised. On the day itself, the city below transforms. Bells ring with optimism. Crowds gather early, hungry for spectacle and relief. Food appears in quantities meant to feel generous without being sustainable. Wine flows just freely enough to soften complaints. Music fills spaces where anger might otherwise linger. You are expected to attend, visible and approving. Your presence legitimizes the joy. You stand on balconies or raised platforms, waving, nodding, allowing yourself to be seen, enjoying the moment. The people cheer because they are supposed to, because cheering feels good, because the alternative is thinking too hard. Up close, the festival is overwhelming. Noise collides with noise. Laughter overlaps with shouting. Performers exaggerate their movements to reach the back of the crowd. Everything is brighter, louder, and more intense than daily life, which is exactly the point. Excess leaves no room for reflection. You notice how carefully the festivities are timed. They arrive after difficult seasons, after new taxes, after rumors, after decisions that would benefit from a distraction. The timing is never accidental. Joy is deployed where it is most needed. Games encourage competition over cooperation. Prizes are small but satisfying. Winners feel briefly important. Losers console themselves with food and drink. Attention splinters into manageable pieces. No one is watching the castle too closely today. Speeches are short and celebratory. No one mentions hardship. Gratitude is encouraged. Hope is implied without specifics. You smile through it all, aware that sincerity is less important than consistency. The message only needs to land. not convince. As the day stretches on, the mood shifts. Drunkenness replaces enthusiasm. Songs lose their polish. Laughter sharpens. This is the dangerous hour. Too much distraction can slip into chaos if not guided carefully. You retreat before this happens, leaving others to manage the decline. From above, later, you watch fires flicker in the streets, harmless and controlled. The people below dance, sing, forget. For tonight, they are occupied. Tomorrow, the same problems will still exist, but they will feel more distant. You understand the value of this, even if it unsettles you. A distracted population is a calmer one. An entertained crowd asks fewer questions. Festivals create memories that can be pointed to later as proof that life is not always hard. At the same time, you know how temporary it all is. The decorations will come down, the food will run out, the wine will wear off. Reality will return quietly, like someone slipping back into a room after the party has ended. There is a strange loneliness in watching it. You are the reason the festival exists, but you are not part of it. You cannot disappear into the crowd. You cannot forget yourself. You are the fixed point around which the distraction spins. When the streets finally quiet and the last song fades, the city exhales. Tomorrow will feel heavier. That is inevitable. The festival did its job by delaying that feeling, not removing it. You return to the castle tired in a way that has nothing to do with effort. You have smiled enough. You have waved enough. You have played your role. Festivals remind you of a simple truth. Joy, when organized from above, is rarely meant to last. It is meant to keep everyone busy long enough for power to remain untouched. You learn quickly that power does not need towers to separate you from people. Stone walls help, certainly, but authority does the work faster and more efficiently. The moment you become important, distance appears where doors used to be. Conversations soften, laughter changes shape. Everyone suddenly remembers their posture. You notice it first in small ways. People stop finishing sentences around you. Jokes arrive pre-filtered, stripped of teeth and consequence. Disagreements vanish, not because you are always right, but because being wrong near you has become dangerous. You are surrounded constantly, yet rarely accompanied. Even meals feel different. You sit at tables filled with advisors, nobles, guests, all speaking in careful turns. Everyone watches your reactions more than they watch each other. A raised eyebrow can end a career. A smile can inflate one. You eat slowly, not from pleasure, but because speed suggests carelessness, and carelessness invites interpretation. Servants are the quietest casualties of your power. The ones who once spoke freely now keep their eyes lowered. They know you still bleed and sleep and cough, but acknowledging it feels improper. Familiarity has been replaced with reverence, and reverence leaves no room for honesty. They serve perfectly and vanish quickly, leaving no trace of themselves behind. Friends fade faster than enemies. Enemies need you. Friends do not. Old companions become cautious, unsure whether speaking as they once did is bold or suicidal. Some try too hard to remain normal, overcompensating with jokes that fall flat. Others withdraw entirely. Deciding distance is safer than misjudgment. You begin to notice how rarely people ask you real questions. They ask what you want. They ask what you think. They ask what should be done. But no one asks how you are unless witnesses are present. Curiosity about you has become performance. Power has weight. It presses outward, flattening nuance. People project onto you what they need to believe. Strength, wisdom, stability. You become a surface onto which expectations are thrown. Layered so thick you sometimes forget what you actually feel beneath them. Walking the castle corridors at night, you feel it most clearly. Guards stand alert, but distant. Advisors have retreated to private plotting. The halls echo, not with noise, but with absence. This is the hour where no one needs anything from you, and no one wants to risk being near you without purpose. You try to remember what it felt like to be unseen, to move through a room without shifting its mood, to speak without consequences rippling outward. Those memories feel strangely fictional now, like stories you once enjoyed but no longer believe. Isolation creeps in quietly. It does not announce itself. It arrives disguised as respect, wrapped in ceremony and protocol. It convinces you that solitude is dignity, that distance is necessary, that closeness is inefficient. It makes loneliness look like leadership. You discover that power attracts people who want something and repels people who want nothing. The former are endless, the latter are rare and eventually exhausted. When someone remains near you without asking for favor, it feels suspicious, not comforting. There are moments when you long for contradiction, for someone to tell you that you are wrong without rehearsing the risk, for laughter that is not measured against consequences, for silence that is not strategic. But power is not interested in your comfort. It only cares about continuity. It isolates you so thoroughly that your inner world becomes the safest place to retreat, even when it grows small and repetitive. You realize then that the castle walls are almost irrelevant. You could remove them entirely and still remain unreachable. The true barrier is invisible, reinforced by expectation and fear and ambition. Power builds its own solitude, and once it settles around you, even the sound of your own footsteps feels distant. You do not grow older quietly. Aging, here, is a public event managed like a procession. Your face becomes a calendar everyone studies closely, counting lines the way scholars count years. You do not simply age, you perform it. Each morning you wake, knowing that your body is being observed long before it is understood. Servants notice stiffness before you mention it. Advisors track your energy by how quickly you sit. Courtiers whisper when your hair thins, then whisper louder when it does not. Nothing about you changes privately. Time itself seems to report to the court. You feel it first in mirrors, polished metal, glass imported at absurd expense, surfaces meant to flatter but never lie. The face looking back is familiar, yet subtly altered, like a manuscript that has been handled too often. The eyes still command, but the skin around them negotiates. You learn to read yourself the way others do, searching for signs you might need to hide. Clothing adapts quietly. Tailors add structure where posture softens. Colors shift toward authority rather than vitality. You are dressed not to appear young, but to appear unchanged, which is a very different and much harder illusion to maintain. Everyone pretends not to notice the adjustments, which only confirms that they do. Public appearances become exercises in stamina. Standing too long invites concern. Sitting too often invites speculation. A cough is never just a cough. A pause in speech becomes a rumor before the sentence ends. You learn to pace yourself not by comfort, but by optics. Even your voice is monitored. If it weakens, people lean in. If it strengthens, they smile with relief. You are praised for endurance, the way soldiers are praised for survival. Simply existing through the years becomes evidence of competence. You miss the freedom of invisibility. Once, you could age the way weather does, gradually and without commentary. Now every change is assigned meaning, wisdom, decline, divine favor, impending collapse. People choose the story that best suits their interests and attach it to your bones. There is no hiding illness. You can postpone acknowledgement, but never erase suspicion. Pale days become theories. Missed events become calculations. Your body is no longer yours alone. It belongs to the future plans of everyone who benefits from your continued function. You notice how younger faces watch you, some with respect, some with impatience. They study your hands, your gait, the rhythm of your breath, not out of cruelty, but curiosity. Someday they will stand where you stand. Someday they will be watched the same way. Portraits are updated less frequently now. Painters soften details, flattering the idea of continuity rather than accuracy. You approve them anyway. History prefers consistency over truth, and you are already being archived while still breathing. There are moments of humor in it, quiet ones. When someone praises your vigor after you climb a staircase without stopping, when applause feels slightly congratulatory, as though you have personally defeated time by arriving upright. You learn to smile at this, because acknowledging it openly would invite discomfort. You become careful with emotion. Too much energy seems desperate. Too little seems ominous. You aim for balance. the steady presence of someone who has always been exactly this age, forever. At night, when the castle settles and observation loosens its grip, you feel your years most honestly. Muscles complain, joints negotiate, fatigue arrives without ceremony. This is the aging no one sees, the quiet accumulation of lived days. You allow yourself to feel it then. In the morning, you resume the role, upright, composed, enduring. Aging publicly teaches you something strange and lasting. Time does not strip power away all at once. It measures it slowly, in glances. You begin preparing for death long before anyone admits that is what you are doing. It starts politely, disguised as organization. Papers are reviewed, seals are checked, titles are clarified with a tone that suggests tidiness rather than finality. Everyone pretends this is just good governance, not rehearsal. You notice how often the past tense appears around you. Advisors reference your earlier decisions as foundations. Courtiers praise traditions you established as if they already belong to history. Your name is spoken with a softness usually reserved for monuments. You are still breathing, still issuing commands, but memory has begun practicing without you. Your possessions become symbolic overnight. Objects you once used casually now carry stories. A chair becomes the chair. A ring becomes the ring. Even your handwriting is examined as if it might stop at any moment. You watch people handle your things more carefully, not out of respect for you, but for what you are slowly becoming. Portraits appear where there were none before. Artists arrive uninvited, claiming it is time. You sit through sessions that feel less like art and more like documentation. They smooth lines, sharpen posture, and quietly remove years you still feel in your bones. You recognize the version they are preserving. It is not inaccurate, it is just selective. You overhear plans made in rooms where you are not present. Not conspiracies, exactly, but continuations. What happens next? Who takes what role? How stability will be maintained? Your absence is discussed like a logistical challenge rather than a loss. It is unsettling and efficient. Religious figures visit more often now. They speak gently, carefully choosing words that comfort without confirming. Prayers are offered for strength, clarity, peace. No one says the obvious thing out loud. Everyone understands the choreography. You begin sorting memories without being asked. Moments rise uninvited. Decisions you defended fiercely. Compromises you swore were necessary. Triumphs that felt smaller once achieved. Failures that grew heavier with time. You do not dwell on them dramatically. You inventory them quietly, the way one checks supplies before a long journey. You notice how people speak about you in front of you. They tell stories as if you are already a story yourself. Familiar anecdotes repeated with reverence. Flaws softened into quirks. Hard edges rounded into wisdom. It is strange hearing your life edited while you are still living it. There is humor in this, if you let yourself see it. You catch someone praising your foresight for a decision you barely remember making. Another thanks you for a kindness you delivered absent-mindedly on a busy day. You resist the urge to correct them. Accuracy feels less important than comfort now. Your body participates in the preparation whether you want it to or not. Fatigue lingers longer. Recovery takes negotiation. You learn the difference between resting and stopping, and you avoid the second one whenever possible. Stopping feels too final. At night, alone, you think about how you will be spoken of. Not grandly, but practically. What lessons will be extracted? What warnings will be attached to your name? You wonder which parts of you will survive, and which will be quietly forgotten. You suspect the wrong ones will be remembered most clearly. You give instructions with unusual care now. Words feel heavier. Promises feel permanent. You choose what to reinforce and what to leave ambiguous. Legacy is not built in dramatic gestures. It is shaped in footnotes. There comes a moment, subtle and undeniable, when you realize that remembrance has already begun. You hear it in the way people lower their voices. You see it in the way they look at you slightly longer than necessary. You feel it in the absence of interruption. You are still here, but you are also being archived. And somewhere between those two states, you understand that death does not arrive all at once. It enters gradually, through memory, until the body finally catches up. You leave knowing the castle will not notice. Stone does not pause. Walls do not bow. The corridors you paced for decades continue holding footsteps that are not yours. You always suspected this, but now the certainty settles in, quietly, without ceremony. The castle has outlived better rulers than you, and worse ones too. It has watched dynasties rise, collapse, regroup, and pretend otherwise. It has absorbed vows spoken with conviction and lies spoken with confidence. It remembers none of them. Memory belongs to people. Stone only records pressure. You realize this as your presence begins to fade from the daily rhythm. Servants still move efficiently. Guards still stand alert. Bells still ring on schedule. The routines continue with a precision that feels almost rude. Nothing slows down to honor you. Nothing stumbles in grief. Your chambers are already transforming. Not dramatically, just practically. Objects are rearranged. Personal items are cataloged. Windows are opened longer than usual, as if airing out a story that has concluded. The room becomes neutral again, ready for the next interpretation of power. You think about how much effort you spent believing you mattered to this place, how you imagined your rule shaped the walls themselves. You gave orders, hosted councils, survived crises within these stones. Yet the castle absorbed it all the way. It absorbs smoke and noise, briefly, then not at all. There is a strange relief in this realization. The burden of importance loosens. You no longer have to carry the fantasy that your presence anchored anything permanent. You were a temporary weight on a very old floor. Walking through the halls one last time, you notice details you once ignored. Chips in stone steps worn smooth by centuries of feet. Door frames polished by hands that belonged to people whose names vanished long ago. You are joining them now. Another layer of invisible history pressed into the structure. The castle does not mourn. It does not celebrate. It does not judge. It simply stands, patient and indifferent, waiting for weather, war, neglect, repair. It will accept the next ruler the same way it accepted you, with silence and structural integrity. You think of the arguments held within these walls, the declarations that felt monumental at the time, decisions that were supposed to change everything. You smile faintly at how loudly certainty once echoed here. The stones did not listen then either. Outside, the land stretches on, much as it always has. Fields grow, paths shift slightly, villages adjust. People continue living lives that barely brushed against yours, except through tax collectors and rumor. The world you governed moves forward without hesitation. There is humor in that, if you allow it. You spent years managing perception, maintaining authority, projecting control, all within a building that would have functioned perfectly well without you. The castle needed maintenance, not leadership, mortar, not morality. You understand now that castles are not symbols of power because they obey rulers. They are symbols because they outlast them. Every banner raised within their walls eventually comes down. Every name carved into their history becomes a footnote. Your name will linger for a while. It will be spoken politely, written carefully, compared unfavorably or generously, depending on who benefits from the comparison. Then it will thin out, replaced by newer concerns, fresher ambitions. The castle will not resist this forgetting. It will not cling to your era. It will not preserve your favorite view or your preferred route through the halls. It has seen too much to become sentimental. And yet, standing there, knowing this, you feel something unexpected. Not sadness, not pride, acceptance. You were never meant to be permanent here. You were meant to pass through. The castle remains, unchanged in its essential indifference, waiting for footsteps that will sound just as important, just as temporary as yours once did.